How did a defeated, humiliated Germany become the birthplace of one of history's most terrifying regimes? To understand the rise of Nazism, we must start at the end of World War I. In 1918, Germany was shattered, its leader gone, its people starving, its armies broken. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, stripped Germany of its colonies, slashed its military, and imposed crushing reparations. For many Germans, the treaty felt like a national humiliation, fueling deep resentment. The new Weimar Republic, Germany's first democracy, was born into chaos, attacked by extremists on both the left and right. Political violence, assassinations, and attempted coups made stability nearly impossible. Then came economic disaster. To pay reparations, the government printed money, triggering hyperinflation. By 1923, the German mark was worthless. Life savings vanished, and desperation spread. A brief recovery in the mid-1920s, fueled by American loans, offered hope, but it was fragile. The 1929 Wall Street crash plunged Germany into the Great Depression. Unemployment soared, despair returned. By 1932, 1 in 3 Germans was out of work, the streets filled with anger and hopelessness. The middle class, the backbone of stability, was destroyed. In this climate of humiliation, instability, and economic ruin, radical ideas took root. People searched for anyone who promised a way out. It was in this fertile ground that the seeds of Nazism began to grow. Into this turmoil stepped Adolf Hitler, a failed artist, embittered war veteran, and masterful orator. In the early 1920s, he took over the tiny Nazi party, offering simple answers and scapegoats: the Treaty of Versailles, communists, and most viciously, Jews. His message was clear: restore German pride, rebuild the economy, and create a new empire. The Nazis were initially dismissed as thugs, but the Great Depression changed everything. As mainstream parties floundered, Hitler's promises of jobs and national revival drew millions. In 1928, the Nazis won just 2.6% of the vote. By 1932, they were the largest party. Conservative elites, fearing communism more than Hitler, made a fateful deal, appointing him Chancellor in January 1933. They thought they could control him. They were wrong. Within weeks, Hitler used the Reichstag fire as a pretext to crush opposition and establish a dictatorship. Democracy in Germany was dead. Once in power, the Nazis moved swiftly to control every aspect of German life. This was Gleichschaltung, or coordination. Trade unions were abolished, political parties banned, and the press silenced. The Gestapo created a climate of fear. Dissenters vanished into concentration camps. The economy was retooled for rearmament. Factories churned out tanks and planes, highways were built for military use. Propaganda, led by Joseph Goebbels, saturated society. Radios blared Hitler's speeches, films glorified the regime, schools and youth groups indoctrinated children with Nazi ideology and loyalty to Hitler. At the core was a toxic racial doctrine. The Nuremberg laws stripped Jews of rights and set the stage for persecution. Kristallnacht in 1938, synagogues burned, Jewish businesses destroyed, was a public warning of horrors to come. Germany was being prepared psychologically and physically for war and genocide. To the outside world, the regime projected order and prosperity, but beneath the surface, a campaign of terror and exclusion was underway. The nation was now a weapon ready to be unleashed. By 1939, Hitler's Germany was a militarized powerhouse. He had remilitarized the Rhineland, annexed Austria, and dismantled Czechoslovakia, while Britain and France appeased him, desperate to avoid war. On September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland under a manufactured pretext. Britain and France declared war. World War II had begun. The German Blitzkrieg, lightning war, overwhelmed Poland in weeks, shocking the world. In 1940, Germany invaded Denmark, Norway, then bypassed France's defences, crushing France in weeks. The British barely escaped at Dunkirk. France surrendered in the same railway carriage as Germany had in 1918. In less than a year, Nazi Germany controlled most of Western Europe. The swastika flew from Norway to the Spanish border. Britain stood alone, defiant but vulnerable. Hitler's vision of a 1,000-year Reich seemed unstoppable. The world watched, horrified and uncertain. The storm had truly broken. With Western Europe subdued, Hitler turned to his ultimate target, the Soviet Union. On June 22, 1941, Operation Barbarossa began. The largest invasion in history. Over 3 million Axis troops surged east, aiming to destroy the subhuman Slavs and seize resources. Blitzkrieg tactics brought early victories, but the vastness of Russia, the resilience of the Red Army, and the brutal winter stalled the advance. By late 1941, German troops froze outside Moscow, unprepared for the cold. The Red Army counterattacked, inflicting the Wehrmacht's first major defeat. In 1942, Hitler targeted Stalingrad and the oil-rich Caucasus. The Battle of Stalingrad became a nightmare: street fighting, starvation, and encirclement. In February 1943, the German Sixth Army surrendered. The myth of Nazi invincibility was shattered. From then on, the Germans were on the defensive in the east. The Red Army, now better equipped and determined, pushed westward relentlessly. The Eastern Front became a frozen hell of suffering and death. The tide of war had turned. As Germany bled in the east, a second front opened in the west. The US entry into the war after Pearl Harbor tipped the balance. Allied bombers devastated German cities and industry, bringing the war home. In North Africa and Italy, Allied victories forced Germany to fight on multiple fronts. On June 6, 1944, to D-Day, Allied forces stormed Normandy, breaching Hitler's Atlantic Wall. After fierce fighting, Paris was liberated. By late 1944, the Allies reached Germany's borders. Hitler's last gamble, the Battle of the Bulge, failed and exhausted Germany's reserves. The Allies crossed the Rhine, the Soviets closed in from the east. Germany was collapsing from all sides. The Nazi regime's days were numbered. The fortress Hitler built was crumbling. The end was near. In the final days, Berlin was a scene of ruin. Hitler, isolated in his bunker, clung to delusions as Soviet shells fell. On April 30th, 1945, Hitler and Eva Braun committed suicide. Berlin surrendered days later. On May 8th, Germany signed unconditional surrender. The war in Europe was over. The 1,000-year Reich had lasted just 12. The Allies uncovered the full horror of the Holocaust. Millions murdered in camps like Auschwitz and Buchenwald. The world was forced to confront the depths of Nazi crimes. At Nuremberg, surviving leaders were tried for crimes against humanity, setting a precedent for international justice. Germany lay in ruins, divided and occupied. The legacy of Nazi Germany is a warning. Even modern, educated societies can fall to hatred and extremism. Democracy is fragile, vigilance is essential. The story of Nazi Germany stands as a permanent reminder: never again.